Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to share with you 3 principles for publishing content online. And really, these principles could be used for doing stuff or doing something that you have been putting off for a long while. Over the past few weeks, I have been engaged in this rather low fidelity, low commitment project of just reading a lot about tech, media, news, and all the other interesting industries to deepen my knowledge about them, process a lot of information that is there out on the internet, and just develop the basic understanding, concepts, and knowledge about a lot of the stuff that I feel is important. So every single day, I have just tried to write an article about a concept, explaining something just to me, and just putting stuff online on my website where I'm pretty sure that no one would be reading, but the entire idea of doing this project in a very low commitment, low fidelity way is to just be in touch and develop this habit, this knack, this basic understanding of industries so you can then leverage it in other places. So in this video, I thought that I'll share with you what I have been working on over the past few weeks and also the 3 principles that I have learned, which are the keys to publishing content or to just get over the hump of not being able to put stuff out there. The first principle is really to lower the quality bar to a great extent. So as you can see in this screen, this is just a work in progress repository of all my notes, ideas, and thoughts on all things related tech. And you can see that all these things are not related to one another, and the topics are actually very distinct and pretty random. So every single day, what I would do is to just choose a topic, or to just randomly reach a topic from any of the email newsletters or blogs that I subscribe to, and just try to write stuff or write my thoughts or even summarize the existing articles on them. So this one is about parallel media migration, whereas this one is about notes on tech versus tech, which is just a concept that I was trying to develop. And these are like my notes on Substack, the company where I publish my newsletter. By the way, do subscribe to my newsletter if you haven't already subscribed. So yeah, the idea is to just get thoughts out there without worrying whether the thoughts that you are getting out there are super high quality or not. And obviously this only applies in the very initial stages when you just need to overcome the inertia of not being able to put stuff online because you feel as if it needs to meet a certain quality benchmark or it needs to be of a certain quality or standard. In fact, Seth Godin has this really interesting phrase where he says that don't think about quality in terms of perfection. Think about quality in terms of meeting spec. So anything that meets specifications, that meets your standards, that meets the metrics that you set for yourself is high quality, and that is what matters. So for me, this is just a work in progress repository of notes that I just want to push out there so that eventually either I could come back to them, deepen my knowledge, or they're just lying there as like incomplete thoughts. The metric for me is that these are working thoughts which are not really fleshed out, and I wouldn't publish them anywhere else, but because my website is a place where I can just put any stuff online, so this is something that I find to be pretty cool to put over there. So yeah, these are just some concepts. I'm not going to go into the details of any of these posts, but one particular post that I spent a lot of time on was notes on bundle economics. And this actually brings me to my second principle, which is that you need to write for yourself. Bundle economics is a concept that I came across from one of Chris Dixon's posts, who is a partner at A16Z. And in this post, I learned a lot about pricing and how can you bundle products together to meet the consumer's willingness to pay threshold and actually make more revenue, and why that makes sense for both the producers and the consumers. And just the way he explained the entire concept was something that was super interesting. So throughout this post, I talked about a few bundles that I had actually seen during college. I redrew in fact the diagram that Chris Dixon drew on his website and tried to explain the concepts in my own words. But really the entire idea of doing this was so that I could deepen my understanding on what bundle economics truly is. And over here, as you can see, it's pretty simple that the willingness to pay for consumer A for Apple TV is $13, whereas for Prime is $5, and that's the opposite for consumer B. But the idea, the interesting thing about bundling is that the demand curves actually stack on top of one another. So the total willingness to pay for Prime and Apple TV is $18, but if you sell the bundle for like $16 or so, you're actually making more revenue than if you were to just sell them individually, and so on and so forth. So the entire post is a bit involved and it's a bit mathy here and there, but in the entire post, I'm just writing my thoughts so that I can clear up my mind. And I think that is something that's totally overlooked, because we often feel that whenever we are starting out to write or publish stuff online, we have to do it for others. And yes, that is the end goal, that you have to add value for others. But I think a natural progression to that state is to go through this necessary evil of first adding value for yourself. And that is why I feel that the second principle of just write for yourself is extremely valuable. The final principle that I wanted to talk about was this idea of publishing frequently. When I started YouTube, when I started writing, and when I started my newsletter, I believe the first 7 to 10 weeks were extremely important. The reason being that it's in those days and it's in those weeks that you're actually forming this habit of just writing, making a video, and doing a podcast every week. And after you get over that initial hump, it's super easy to just integrate all of this as like a pastime hobby in your day-to-day routine, and that is something that's extremely valuable. Similarly, for First Drafts, which is this repository of all these low commitment notes, I made it a point to first just get into this loop of publishing frequently and lowering the quality bar, which was the principle 1. And I feel that just by publishing frequently, you begin to set this flywheel in motion. And Jim Collins, a professor at Stanford, in fact, talks about this idea, which is the flywheel concept. And the entire idea is that you want to just apply a lot of momentum in the beginning to push and turn any flywheel. But once the flywheel turns and it gathers its own momentum, soon you'll realize that the flywheel just self-sustains and you don't actually need to apply any force to it in pushing it. And that is what I feel also applies to publishing anything online, that you just have to continuously be at it for the first few weeks. And if you can just do that, if you can overcome the initial inertia, if you can just be consistent and frequent without worrying about the quality in the first few weeks, let's gather at 10 weeks, then you will get into the habit of publishing content. And once you get into the habit of publishing and putting stuff out there, then you can worry about quality. I remember watching one of Ali Abdaal's videos in which he says that it's super important for you to just crank out first 50 or 100 videos as soon as possible, because the first 50 videos or the first 50 pieces of content that you push out there are probably going to be very bad. And surprisingly, this is in fact my 50th video. So I believe that if I can just be on top of this cycle, and if you can also just be on top of publishing whatever it is that you do want to, or even if it's not publishing, just be consistent at a particular craft deliberately, that is what gathers momentum, and that is what will scale and eventually in the long term, or rather in the very long term, gather enough momentum to self-sustain. So these were the 3 principles that I thought were super important and super simple that I've learned just by doing these things on the side, and I thought that I would share them with you. Thanks for watching.